Good evening and welcome on into this special edition of ABC4 News After the Debates. I'm Jordan Tracy. We are so happy to have you with us. A lot to unpack. For the next hour or so, we're going to be breaking down tonight's debate between Democratic candidate for president, Vice President Kamala Harris, and Republican candidate, former President Donald Trump. How did they do? What are some of those takeaways? And what have we learned in this race? I want to welcome in our panel. We have a full panel to discuss all of those issues for us tonight. We have Juliet Carlisle, professor of political science at the University of Utah, Jay Desart from the Utah Valley University, chair of history and political science department, and we have Jeannie Johnson, who is the chair of the Center for Anticipatory Intelligence. Did I get that right?
You did.
I said anticipatory very well. I think so. Let's see. So myself. Okay, a lot to unpack here. We have the next hour to do so. I just want to start with kind of going into this. It seems like Vice President Harris had an opportunity to define herself and define her path forward. For President Trump, he also had to define her as a candidate because of coming into this race so late in the game. I want to get your first takeaways. Juliet, starting with you. What was your initial takeaway, just generally, of this debate tonight?
I mean, I think we had a lot of anticipation on this debate, and I think that, yes, Kamala Harris had to define herself and reintroduce herself. I think there's still about, a third of the population or voters who are still unfamiliar with her. And I think she did a really good job of laying out who she is and what her goals are for the future.
Now, Jay, we've talked polls before on Inside Utah Politics. When we talk about debates, usually a debate won't have that much sway. But this is a different kind of debate. We saw how much sway the first debate between President Trump and President Biden went down, and now we have this one, their first face-to-face, haven't even met each other in person until now. Does that change how a poll will be perceived in this election and maybe how the polls will change?
Potentially. I mean, I think at this stage of the race, a lot of the support is already baked in with a lot of folks. So there's probably some folks on the margins that this might have an impact with. I think ultimately I think there's more for voters to try and make a decision about Harris than about Trump. Trump is a known quantity. We've known him for quite a while. Harris is a relatively new candidate in this race. So I think there's more for her to do than for him to do as far as defining themselves.
And Jeannie, a little bit in the watch party that we had, we were eating candy and watching the debate tonight. Full disclosure, break the fourth wall. But when we were talking a little bit about it, you thought that Kamala Harris, the vice president, had some good moments of laying out that plan and policy forward.
It did. I will say, though, if you're looking for that overall impression, my overall impression is that she missed an opportunity to really define herself. By focusing so much on Trump and on his record, the accusations that she laid out and the criticisms, any other person could also do that. That doesn't tell us very much about her. It maybe tells us how she handles pressure. It tells us that she can handle herself in a debate, but it doesn't actually help us define her so much as it does her definition of Trump, right? And so I think there was a little bit of a missed opportunity there.
And when you talk about that ability to debate, was that a part of this? Because we saw President Biden, and that was the key. It didn't seem like he had the ability to debate, but Kamala Harris, night and day, was that something that folks were looking for, or maybe expecting that she'd be able to handle herself?
Well, I think maybe that was part of the strategy for Harris, is to sort of recover from the Biden debate and show a stark contrast to her performance versus Biden's performance. And I think it translated into Trump's performance then as well, because there was a very different tenor to the way Trump was behaving in debate one versus debate two. He seemed much more composed and controlled in the first debate. Harris got under his skin this time around, and I think his tone was very different, and I think that was by design.
And I do want to talk about that strategy of getting under his skin. But first, let's hear from the candidates about just overall voicing their plans, whether someone has one, whether someone doesn't. Let's hear what they had to say tonight.
She doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences. like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
If she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics.
So you heard them there kind of going back and forth about whether someone has a plan, what their plan is, if it's Biden's plan, because I felt like there were a chance here where you could lay out what kind of their strategy was. It seemed like there were moments where President Trump tried to tie her to Biden. But then she, Kamala Harris, tried to make it about him and then say, look, he's making it about himself. Do you think that was the strategy? And Julie, I want to start with you. How well did those strategies get played out tonight?
I think you're right. I think in some cases she did sort of attribute some things to him, but she also did a really good job of saying things about the American people. He's not for you, I'm for you. And I think that that's really helpful. I think people want to hear that. And so I think that was one of her strategies, right? And I think she did a very effective job of reminding people that she's a person who cares about the average American citizen, whereas he might not. And she painted him that way a few times as well.
Did President Trump do enough to tie her to Biden? Do you think that that kind of got lost in the mix tonight?
I think so. I think that did get a little bit lost. Trump's strategy should have been tying her to the current conditions, and it's all and blaming her for it. Now, he tried to do that from time to time, but he often got sidetracked by a lot of things when she would goad him.
Absolutely. And we have some of those turning point moments written down. And there's one particular moment we're going to point out, but we do have to take a quick break. We have more analysis from our panel here on tonight's debates right after this. Don't go anywhere.